I'm just going to be fighting for my life to not cry this entire episode. Have fun. Hey, Better Babes. I'm Jonathan Van Ness, and welcome back to Getting Better. Today, we're going to uncharted territories that involve a chart, and it's astrology, honey. Now, you'll notice that I looked at my card right before I said that. I always get astrology and astronomy confused. So much so that my freshman year in college, I signed up for an astronomy class thinking it was astrology, and it was the hardest math problems, and I non-jokingly failed. I got an F. Not good at it. But astrology, honey, I want to learn. I haven't gone back. I need to learn more. So is astrology real? What's going on in astrology 2025? That's what we're asking today on Getting Better. To take us into the world, all things astrology, we have an incredible guest, Aliza Kelly, who is a renowned astrologer, author, and columnist for The Cut, and host of Horoscope Weekly. So you can get a lot more Aliza if you want more Aliza after this episode, honey. Aliza, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much.
Thank you for taking your time.
Thank you for coming back to astrology after failing astronomy.
I was bad.
You are going to get an A+ in astrology.
Yeah, I failed hard. Those 3D math problems are not my jam.
Yeah, they don't have to be. I mean, that's not what your mission is.
So you get stuck in an elevator with someone, but it's only going to be a minute. And you're like, I'm an astrologer. And they're like, I don't believe in astrology. What's your 1-minute elevator pitch for why we should believe in astrology?
Oh my gosh, this is a very interesting question to start, because I would never find myself in an elevator telling someone I'm an astrologer and trying to convince them to believe in astrology. In no universe, pun intended, would that happen, because I am not an evangelist. I am not someone, it is not my mission to convince people that astrology is real. I love astrology. I am passionate about it. It is my soul's work. And I am so excited. It's a deep honor to get to share this work with people and to really see how it changes people's lives. But it's one of many tools. And if it's not someone's tool, then that's okay, And how astrology works is really incredibly magical. It's an ancient system. So there are archetypes that we've been working with for literally thousands of years. And yet somehow they grow with us and they change with us. And we're able to experience our current modern life with these archetypes, just as people 1,500 years ago were able to. And I think that this is really a testament to this beautiful reflection that we see in astrology. It's fluid, it's changing, it's malleable, and it meets us where we are. So I guess that's how astrology works. But I also feel like if we're asking over and over again if it's real, I think we're missing the point.
Yes.
And we're missing where the healing can happen.
How would you explain to someone how the science of astrology works?
So I would say that astrology is not a science. It is an art. And the way that it works is that we really are, let's sort of back it up. When we have a birth chart, which is a snapshot of the sky at the exact moment that someone or something comes into being, it is a reflection of where every planet, celestial point was at that moment. And it's going to carry through, right? It's going to define that person, what their gifts are, what their magic is. It's going to define that event, what was happening at that moment, at that precise time. It's really interesting to look at the charts of important dates in history, what was happening at that moment in time. And through that, we can sort of see and experience how that impression of the sky continues to play out through time. And this is also where sort of the magic happens, right? It's recognizing that the astrologer is working as the interpreter. The astrologer is the translator of that experience, which is why it is an art form. It's about how are we taking this information and making it relatable, digestible, powerful, informative, something that we can actually work with, as opposed to just feel like we are being controlled by.
What is past horoscopes and past ideas that we have of astrology? What does the healing of astrology entail?
The healing of astrology is compassion, and it is understanding yourself and using these tools to get a better sense of who you are, what your strengths are, what places within you need extra love and tenderness and care. And one of my favorite things about astrology is that it is very cyclical, and it shows us the patterns that we experience over and over again in our life. And oftentimes there's this sort of like, I have been exposed to this rhetoric of like, oh, I thought that I healed that, right? Why do I have the same situation happening to me again? Why am I dealing with another disappointing job or another disappointing partner or whatever it is? But in my work, what I've come to realize is that it's because our charts and our souls are wired to experience certain things again and again and again. And it's not that we're experiencing it because we haven't cleared it and healed it. It's because we are being invited to look at it from a different perspective every single time. And there are certain people who have stories around relationships. There are certain people who have stories around disappointment. And just because we still find ourselves in that loop doesn't mean that we're not evolving. It's actually an opportunity for us to just go deeper every single time.
We were literally just talking about this last week on our episode about failure. And I was talking about mindfulness and how sometimes I feel like I've practiced mindfulness like only in times of like crisis. And then when I run back into certain situations, I'm like, I know what I'm supposed to do. Like, why am I experiencing this again? And then there's this like kind of critic that can kind of come up, but it's like that. And that's what Dan Harris, our guest, was saying, is like that a lot of spiritual teachers talk about this like cyclical nature to like what we're learning. And then that's not something to necessarily be critical about. It's just kind of like, it's a truth of the universe that we are, that is just, and I hear that you saying that astrology, it's an art, not a science. But you know what's interesting about that? I got to interview this woman who I'm obsessed with. Her book is usually right next to me. Jessica Hernandez. Oh, it's over on your side. But she wrote this book called Fresh Banana Leaves. And I love her. And she talks a lot about indigenous medicine and how Western medicine and like Western science like doesn't want to classify like indigenous medicine as like as scientific or medicine because it doesn't have these like data points to quantify. But it's like people have been studying birth charts and where the points were and the stars in the sky were. Some like people have been studying this for thousands of years is what I hear you saying.
Right.
And then people have also been like tending to their own experience of astrology in their own life and then like literally documenting what they notice about people who were born in similar spots, like the tendencies that people have together. So there is like a little bit of a science to it. Like there is like people have been studying this for thousands of years and there are like similar traits and energies that like that kind of come out that you can kind of tease out. And I don't think that all of that could possibly just be like fully random. Like it does seem like there are some things that you guys can point to that there is some sort of like consistency. And obviously the astrologer is going to interpret things differently, but like that's kind of amazing.
It is. And yes, I mean, to your point exactly, the reason that I say it's not science is because it can't be run through our very Western scientific method, right? And that is what we are defining as a science, right? But psychology then is also not really a science, right? It's a soft science. It's something that we are understanding, that we're learning about, right, as we go. It was not even 100 years ago that it was considered pseudoscience and it was considered like quackery, right? So like we as a society have a lot to learn about the past, about indigenous cultures, about ancient systems. So yes, by our current definition of being a science, it is not because you can't run it through a double blind. You know what I mean? But like it works. Astrology works. I wouldn't be doing this work for so many years if it didn't work.
Yes.
It's powerful. It changes people's lives. And it is also a beautiful reflection of people's truth. I mean, we'll get into your chart later on, but it's so exciting to see how a chart can allow and give us permission to be ourselves.
What is astrology offering us when we engage with it intentionally?
I think that astrology gives us permission. It gives us permission to be ourselves and understand ourselves from this very beautiful, poetic perspective. And we can see things in our charts and astrologically. And when I say in our charts, I am, of course, talking about, the birth chart. But I also always invite people to meet themselves wherever they are. We don't all have to become astrologers and experts at this to work with this system. Just finding out that you have a moon and your moon does a cool thing, and finding out what zodiac sign that is a great way to deepen and create an astrological practice for yourself. I don't want to be ever sort of inclusive with the system. I don't want to be exclusive with the system.
Now, sidebar, if you were going to like take a new client, is this like how it happens? Like, would you like print out a chart and then you guys would like look at it together? Is this like what, like does it not work like that? Like what's like an astrological appointment like with your new astrologer?
Well, an astrological appointment is now on Zoom. So that is one of the big technology improvements. Before, for many years, I was just doing it on this like free conference call line, which was so spooky and kind of its own experience. But now I have the wonderful Zoom where I can pull up the chart and we can look at it together. So yes, it's an interactive, and astrology is a visual language too. So it's fun to be able to sort of like experience what the different patterns are with people.
Okay, let's go into my chart.
Yes.
Let's go into the great unknown.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Guide us there. So, I mean, actually, you know, you do have a moon in Pisces, and Pisces placements are excellent singers. So I feel like you just brought us into the chart. You literally opened up the chart for us.
Also, too, because you said earlier, you don't want this to be exclusive, and I don't want this to be like all about, it's not the Jonathan show, as my husband says. He said it once. Oh my God, that's so rude. He said it once, and I'm like saying on my podcast, it's so rude. Mark, I'm sorry, I love you. But like if someone's just like newer to astrology, like what are like the parts that, like, cause I always hear people saying like rising this, like what are just like the geography of a chart and like the things that we need to understand, like the words of a chart?
Yes, great question. So we use a birth chart calculator. There's lots of free calculators. My favorite app is called Time Passages. You plug in your date, time, and location of birth, and it gives you this beautiful 360 map of who you are. And then of those, of all of the things that are in this map, I would say the things that are probably the easiest to take away from that are your big three: your sun, moon, and your rising. So your rising is what sign was coming up over the eastern horizon at your exact moment of birth. And this tells us your perspective on reality. So it's like, what are the most important things to you? And for you as a Gemini rising, it's conversation, it's being in dialogue, it's curiosity, it's being able to really understand not just yourself, but also other people. It's like there's a quest within you where you're sort of like always seeking your twin. Like you're always seeking some sort of like familiarity or relatability or something where you're like, oh, I get that. I can see that. I can understand it. And that feeling of wanting to connect is your driving force in this lifetime, period. You know, it almost like we can forget the rest almost, because that is the anchor of what your chart is. And for everyone listening, that's your rising sign. Your rising sign are the themes, the narratives, the storylines that you are going to experience over and over again throughout your life.
Wow, that makes me emotional, because that like all just like resonated so much.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. It's a mission, you know? I think that's something that is really important to talk about with astrology, and why it is so amazing and why it is science and it is art and it is magic, is because it speaks to a soul. And a soul, when we talk about soul, like what is a soul, right? How do we define that? Everyone has a different understanding of it, a different feeling of it, but simply it's just you. You know, it is just who you are. And that soul needs to be expressed, right? And astrology gives us more permission to do that. So you have this beautiful Gemini rising and then your sun sign. So most people, when they know astrology, they find out their sun sign. That's what they see in their horoscope. That's what
I always feel like I hear people talk about.
Yes. And it's great. We love a sun sign because the sun is what shines. The sun is how we glow. The sun is our energy. It's our vibration. It really is sort of like how we find our happiness and our joy. And your sun sign is in Aries, which is the first sign of the zodiac. And it's like here for the first time, baby. It like loves to just love and experience life. And it's playful and it's competitive and it wants to win. And it says all the wrong things at all the right times, you know?
Oh yeah, that's so mean.
Yeah. It's just like, it's aggressive, because it loves to be alive and it wants to seize as much life as possible from every single opportunity and experience it can. And then when you start to sort of like combine these things, right? So it's a Gemini rising. So you are on this quest to connect and form these connections. And then your sun sign is how you are doing that, right? You're doing that by not being afraid to raise your hand first, by not being afraid to like say something that is just really, that makes people feel comfortable because you're putting yourself on the line. You're not afraid to sort of like have that experience so that other people can do it behind you, And part of that solar Aries mission for you is like, I'm going to be the brave one here. And I'll connect because I'll be the one who steps in first.
So your rising sign is what was coming over the east horizon when you were born. Then your sun sign is where the sun was when you were born. And then is your moon sign where the moon was when you were born?
Yes. Everything is where it was when you were born.
Got it.
And the moon in your chart is in Pisces. And it's really cool because Gemini rising, Aries sun, they both have this sort of like, I don't care. Like, I'll deal with it later. But the moon in Pisces cares a lot. It cares very, very deeply. It's a very spiritual placement. It's a very psychic placement. It's a placement that has just this bottomless well of compassion and artistry and creativity and empathy. And so much so that sometimes it gets really overwhelming. And it can be hard to connect in the world, which is also interesting because your mission is connecting. So through this, we see some of these nuances and some of these complexities and contradictions. You are someone who benefits from being social. You are someone who benefits from being able to really, have to talk things out. But your moon, which is how you feel, sometimes needs solitude, deep solitude.
That's like literally, I'm like gonna cry, you guys. That's like, I wrote a whole book about it. Like finding that balance in my life has been like the bane of my existence. And then becoming like a famous public facing figure, like solitude just got like taken away.
Yeah.
It just like wasn't an option. Like don't have the time. And especially being in public as a public person, like coming from a small town, like wanting to get out of it and going to like a bigger place where I could like be anonymous and just walk down the street with like no one knowing who I was or like, saying like whatever, like that kind of got like stripped away as well. Like, cause then I just was like JVN everywhere I went. And so that like friction, I have just been feeling that friction so much. And then it ultimately led me to isolate because I was like, I needed the solitude and I just couldn't handle being on like that all the time. But then I got so depressed because I need people and I need to be around people and I need to be like in social situations with, I feed off of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just resonating so much.
Yeah. I think that it's, and when we have these tension points in our chart, I see them as some of our greatest gifts because they are opportunities for us to have a really compassionate perspective of who we are and what we need, and also how we can give to the world, recognizing that these differences within you, the feeling of absolutely 100% needing to like talk things out and be social and form connections. And also that sort of self-destructive part of you. And also that part of you that just needs to like not be accountable to anyone, that just really needs to disappear. All of those can exist in tandem. And it's meeting yourself where you are every step of the way to really check in and also know, of course, what season you're in astrologically is so helpful for that too. But to know sort of like where is my give and take on this? Because it's not just all one and it's not just all the other. There's this beautiful choreography within them and this balance that we have to consider. And it doesn't make you broken to have a balance and to recognize that there are these different pieces of you that all need love in different ways.
So is there something about my chart? Like, there's a little conflict and it was my rising or like, where's like the tension point there?
Rising to moon. But also, I mean, we could say that sun and even moon, right? Aries to Pisces, they're right next to each other in the zodiac. You were born Did you know that you were born just before a solar eclipse?
No.
Yes. So you were born just on the precipice of a solar eclipse. It must have been the very next day, actually.
That's my mom's birthday.
Really?
Yeah.
But it wasn't a solar eclipse on the day she was born.
No, because unless we did her chart. I mean, she was born literally the exact same place, just the day after me in 1960.
Unless we did her chart. I mean, that would be incredibly wild. But you were born on the day before a solar eclipse. And a solar eclipse, so you're an eclipse baby. And eclipses are major in astrology. And when you're born during an eclipse, it means that you have that sort of majorness within you, that sort of, it's highs and lows. It's big. It's a lot of up, and then it's like dropping all the way down, right? It's extremes. And you probably felt that even when you were little. Even before the stakes were as high as they are now, you probably felt this sort of like, oh my gosh, like this is life or death. And maybe people were like, what are you talking about?
I would literally go to go onto my trampoline and be like, this is for Olympic gold. If I fall right now on this next front flip, I've lost the gold for the country. And then if I fell, I'd be like,
yeah.
But then I'd be like, no, you have another chance now, actually. That was just a warm up. This is actually a competition.
Really, we were just practicing.
But it's true, like just very extreme. My whole life, like really high highs, really low lows.
Yes.
Yes.
And if you think about, a solar eclipse is very dramatic, right? Like it's when the moon blocks out the sun and it temporarily turns day into night, and when you experience one, like the birds stop chirping, it gets like very eerie, it gets cold, it is high drama.
Yeah.
It is high drama. And remember, where the planets from when you were born are a snapshot of the energy that you bring with you throughout your life, right? So you have that piece of you that has that sort of like total eclipse energy, right? Where you're going to need to do these really big pivots and say like, we're done. This is over. And maybe people are going to be like, wait, but we just started. And you're like, this isn't right. We can't continue. Even if we were going to have to backpedal, we need to change it now. And that is a gift. It's a gift to have that. And you can also be, an advocate for others who maybe who don't have their energy expressing in that same way, who stay in situations way too long. It's in a way you have this sort of like guardian angel in your chart that helps you get out of situations when it's getting really, really dark and really bad. It's like something clicks in you and you're like, wait, something has to change. And you'll find that change, even if it's in an unexpected place.
One thing that you already taught me is that like really our rising sign is like, can be even as consequential, if not more consequential than your sun sign. But so often when we like meet someone, it's like, oh, what's your sign? And I'm like, oh, I'm an Aries. So what do you wish that people like if someone's gonna be like, oh, what's your sign? What do you think is like the most important?
I'll take whatever I can get. If someone just knows their sun sign and wants to talk about their sun sign, I think that that's beautiful. And we can like really explore that because the sun is important. But in a perfect world, people would tell me their big three. Always their sun, moon, and rising, because it's just like from that you get so much information. It's so meaty, and you can start to understand like, what the mission is. How are we expressing it? How are we feeling about it? It's a perfect trifecta.
I want to just stick in the charts a little bit before we dive into manifestation, because I do want to go there. But because we were talking earlier kind of about my chart, I want to just get a little bit more basic again. So your rising sign is how you
perceive reality.
And your sun sign is how you
move through the world.
And your moon sign is how you feel about it.
Yeah, how you feel.
So also, could you say that your sun sign is like how other people kind of perceive you? Because it's like how you move through the world.
Yes, I would say that. This is a controversial take that I want to share with the world. So for all of you listening, the rising sign is not the mask you wear in public. If anything, the sun sign is more of how people perceive you. Your rising sign is your perception of reality. So naturally, your perception of reality is going to show up in the way that you interface, the way that you sort of interact, but how you walk into a room is your sun sign.
So that's why people are always like, with me, they're like, oh yeah, Aries, duh.
Yeah.
Like, but Gemini is probably what I need to learn more about to understand myself better, because I don't really know anything about Geminis really.
Yeah. So with Gemini being your rising sign, it's something that I think once you find some of those keywords associated with Gemini, which is curiosity, fluidity, adaptability, flexibility.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
I'm so flexible.
Yes.
I'm literally gender fluid. I'm the most curious fucking person I know. Like, I am a fucking Gemini.
Astrology works.
I mean, okay, honestly, I was like not fully converted before, but I'm fully just like legs spread open, like fucking lunar me to hell.
Well,
I'm so down.
as
I'm so
I
here
said,
for
like
it.
I do feel like you have, there's a reason that you are doing the show. There's a reason that you are on this quest. Your soul wants to learn everything and really sort of like drink it all in. And astrology is one of the things.
Okay, I did want to go to this like manifestation, like other place, but now I just want to, like, how you were saying, like, you really get comforted by like, on one hand, your chart really needs people, but then on the other hand, you really need solitude. Like, based off my chart, who would hate me? Like, who doesn't, like, who would like, or not hate me, but who would just be like, oh, bitch, like, I don't ever want to be around people, or like, who just like would not feel like that?
Well, I'm not going to just say, because it's more than just a single sign, and
It's all of it.
Yes. I mean, I would say that like,
or who's like the opposite of me?
well, I would say, and like, this is, again, like this is, I'm not saying all Tauruses, but I would say that with the fixed signs, with Tauruses or Leos or Scorpios or even Aquariuses, who are much more fixed, and this is how it is, and this is the way that we need to go. And once they commit to something, they're like fully in. But that is so not you. You are, and I hope that you give yourself lots of permission to change your mind, because it's such a gift, the ability to change your mind. And it's one of the things that you have working for you in your chart is that flexibility. So I could imagine that someone who has like a lot of rigidity and a lot of sort of like, this is what I'm committing to, this is what I said, this is my word, would be like, they're all over the place,
Yeah.
like they said they were going to do this and now they're doing something else. Like, how am I supposed to trust them? How could I believe them? But I don't think anyone hates you.
No, I know. I guess it's just like, who would my chart kind of like antagonize, or like who would I need to like give more space or like gentleness to? Cause like I might just like rub them super fucking irritatingly.
Yeah, I would say that it's someone who, when they commit to something, they don't ever sort of introduce another narrative to it.
Okay, that's resonating.
But that's their healing work, like that is their healing work. Just as you have your healing work, their healing work is also to embrace flexibility.
Okay, so we just got to have Gabby Bernstein on the pod, who I love. And she's so good. And we were talking to her about manifestation, and you also read about manifestation. How do you feel astrology and manifestation go hand in hand?
So as we touched on a little bit ago, I think that what astrology is your soul expressing itself. And in my relationship with manifestation is that true manifestations are just what our soul want. And it's really just allowing ourselves and giving ourselves permission to reach as far as we need to reach to bring those experiences into our reality. So by understanding yourself through astrology or whatever other tool you want to use to understand yourself, you are going to enhance your manifestation. I don't really think you can manifest until you do work on yourself to understand who you are and what you want. One of the things that I talk about in one of my earlier books called This Is Your Destiny is when you are, let's say, manifesting a job, don't focus on what jobs are out there. Don't go on LinkedIn and start looking at what available roles are there, because that's so limited and so small. Instead, focus on what kind of energy you want to be attracting, what kind of roles and what kind of opportunities light you up. So don't focus on an industry, on a position, on a title, because all of that is so surface level. Focus on the the energetic vibration of what is going to make you feel fulfilled, independently from, I'm supposed to be working in marketing, I'm supposed to be working in PR. And that is how you're ultimately going to find the manifestations that align with your soul. And similarly, based on one's chart, the chart isn't just trying to like send out its resume. You know what I mean? The chart is trying to express itself however it needs to. So it might surprise you what things you can connect with when you give yourself permission to go beyond just sort of like the structure of this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Really, it's like astrology is like giving you like, it's like teach some or like give the kid the fish, they eat for the day. But if you like teach the kid to fish, they like eat forever. It's really like teaching you like a modality to like kind of understand the world, understand yourself more and better.
Yes.
I think one astrology like phrase that I am always hearing, I think so many of us are hearing, it's like Mercury's in retrograde. Don't start anything. Mercury's in retrograde. My life's falling apart. What does that mean? Like, what's the whole, does Mercury in retrograde have a bad rap or is that real? And should we like not do new shit when that's happening?
It does have a bad rap. It is real and it also isn't real. And we should live our lives during it. But Mercury retrograde is definitely like, Mercury retrograde has its own PR team for sure. Like maybe Kris Jenner is behind Mercury retrograde because like the way that like astrologically this has been adopted and beloved by all culture is beyond me. I don't know why Mercury retrograde has become the darling of pop culture, but
and it's not in retrograde, like because it's like if it's in retrograde, like in New York, it's maybe not in Australia.
No, it is universally retrograde.
It is.
Yes.
Oh, how interesting.
But it's also not, because all planets go retrograde, and it's an optical illusion. So the way that a retrograde works is it has to do with the speed of our planet, Earth, my favorite, that we're on right now, and then the planets as they are moving on their own paths and speeds. So it's kind of like when you're on the subway and you start to go faster than the other train next to you and it looks like it's going backwards.
Yes.
That's the optical illusion of Mercury or any retrograde. So planets aren't going backwards. They just look like they are.
Oh, how fucking interesting. Sidebar, I saw this thing on TikTok that was like, this is how you think the planets are orbiting. And it was like 2D. And I was like, yeah. It was like, this is how it really is. And they were all like, because they're not all on perfect concentric circles.
Yes.
It was like the first day of like.
Right, because they're spinning and they're orbiting at the same time. Because
it's like a 3D. It's like not, it's like, my fucking gay brain. And then I remembered why I failed astronomy.
Right.
Because like those distances and that 3D, it's like that shit is just, space is so big.
Yeah, because it's kind of like beyond 3D. It's kind of operating on a whole different dimension.
It's like literally, I feel like that's like what Christians really meant when they're like, some things are just so big that like our brains aren't meant to understand. I'm like, yes, space. Because that shit's like so fucking gigantic. Like, how are we supposed to think about that? But this does give us a modality, but it is just like a gigantic thing. So basically, it's real and it's not. We should live our life, but why has it caught on? What does it mean?
Well, when Mercury is the planet of communication and technology and commerce and our phones and like everything that we need to do to live a normal life. So when Mercury goes retrograde, it does shift our perspective of those things. So we do find that we have more miscommunications and more technology glitches, and we're sending a text to our boss that is meant for our lover and like chaos, all of it happens. But Mercury retrograde on its own is not going to ruin your life. If your life is falling apart, there are bigger forces at play than just Mercury retrograde. I'm sorry to say.
So many of us are looking for meaning and clarity and a sense of connection. And astrology seems to speak to that longing. Why do you think astrology has seen such a cultural resurgence, especially among millennials and Gen Z?
Well, I think that it's really interesting to see how astrology has become, has really grown into what it is at this moment. I started doing this work over a decade ago under a very different administration, in a very different time and place. And I have seen over these very important watershed moments that have happened over the past decade and change, how people have found themselves more and more interested and gravitating to it. One of them was, because I started doing this work in 2013. So I was there during the first Trump win. That was really interesting. Suddenly, every magazine wanted to have an astrology column. That was unusual. During COVID, astrology exploded. I mean, truly exploded. Everyone became an astrologer during COVID. And now again, we've had another watershed election. Astrologically, these next couple of years are going to be wild, truly unprecedented and insane for us. And I imagine that through that, we are still going to be going deeper into figuring out what are the patterns? What are the patterns? What is the meaning? How can we make sense of this time? And if you think about what millennials and Gen Z have been through a lot, you know? And not to say that people 1,500 years ago weren't going through a lot, but they were using astrology then too. You know, astrology is with us through all of these difficult times in our lives. And astrology is this powerful way of being able to connect and interpret and find deeper meaning in some of these patterns and cycles that are unfolding. I also like to mention, because I think it's really cool, that astrology is very adaptable. As we talked about at the beginning, you know, it's a language that grows with us, and astrology has grown with the internet. Memes and all of the ways that we can sort of disseminate information have made astrology more part of the vernacular now. And I think that that's cool because astrology loves that. Astrology wants to meet you wherever you are. So if we're speaking in memes, like astrology is going to speak in memes too. Perfect.
How do you feel like astrology gives a sense of community and like belonging?
So I think that astrology, I mean, I have been running a virtual community called the Constellation Club since 2019. And I also host retreats and bring people together. And what I see in the communities, virtually and in person, is that people feel like they could just be themselves. And when we are leading with our hearts and our souls and just like the complex beings that we are, we don't have to put on so many airs. We don't have to try to pretend that we're someone we're not. We can just exist as ourselves, and we can ask questions, and we could be curious, and we could get to know each other compassionately. And one of the things, and maybe I should have even said this in the elevator at the beginning of our conversation, is that astrology lets us have better conversations. When we have astrological conversations, we're really listening to each other and we're really getting to know each other. And it just enhances the way that people are willing to be vulnerable and to be who they are, which is, I think, the most beautiful thing about being a human.
You've also explored the intersection of spirituality and psychology, something that we love talking about on Getting Better. How can astrology help us navigate difficult times and asking ourselves difficult questions?
I think that when we look at, well, let me back this up. When people come to an astrologer, it's usually because they're going through a really difficult time, or there's something that is not clicking. You know, there are these big questions that we just can't seem to solve and figure out. And one of the amazing things about astrology is that it is a reminder that nothing lasts forever, that everything is a phase, and that we go through different periods in our life where we might feel like things are not working, right? We're trying as hard as we can and we're just hitting our head against the wall. Or we're going to go through periods of our life where like we feel incredibly abundant. And in those periods, we should be really grateful because we know that everything is cyclical, right? Everything comes back around, and it's not that we're always just going to be linearly going up and up and up. It's that we also have to find periods that are going to be more solitary or not as flush, you know? Yeah. We're always going to have to go through these cycles. So I think that one of the cool things about astrology is that it can meet us where we are, and it could give us understanding of the timing of where we are in that moment and where we are in that cycle, where we are in that rhythm, you know, and of course, what is the information? What are the lessons and the learnings that we need to receive from this point in our life? And I think that also considering that instead of feeling like things are happening to us, to use it as an opportunity to consider what am I learning from this is always a beautiful way of redirecting and reimagining those challenges and those difficult times.
How else does like the planets and like the charts like interpret itself? Like if like what else matters?
Everything. I mean, truly, truly everything matters. And I think that that's one of the most exciting things about astrology, and also cultivating a practice for yourself. For anyone listening who's like, oh, I like astrology, but I don't know where to start. Like, start wherever you want. Start anywhere, because everything matters. And if you hear something that is striking a chord, it's striking a chord for a reason. So if you've been hearing about Saturn return and you're like, oh, I wonder what that is.
Yes.
Like, explore it. See what it means. Investigate.
I learned about it from Ariana Grande. What is Saturn return?
Saturn return is when Saturn in the sky comes back around to the position it occupied when you were born. And this happens when you're about 29, 30 years old. And I call it your astrological bar or bat mitzvah. It is when you become an adult. It is when you are truly, finally yourself. And most importantly, it means that you are no longer doing things for other people. You're not doing things because your teachers or your parents or your community or your neighborhood
But what
or
if
society.
I was after I was 30?
So I would like to talk about some timing things in your chart for a brief moment.
Yeah, and you write about. I was actually just going to ask you about that. Talk about timing. I was going to ask you about divine timing. And are you a fan of Ariana?
Of course.
In Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, in that one like intro where it's like Saturn's all bopping around somewhere when we're born, and it normally, that interlude.
Yes.
So I was wondering, I was like, was Saturn on like hiatus until I was like 7, and so like last year was my Saturn return or something? Like, could mine have been late? Like, why was 2024? Like, my 2024 was like literally. I've talked about it so much on the pod, so I'm sorry if you're listening to this and you're just like, bitch, stop talking about 2024. But like it, other than like the Summer Olympics and the fact that we got gold and that Suni made the team and she got like an individual all around and a bar medal, and she came away with those from those Olympics with like 3 new medals. And obviously so excited to see Simone back and just Team USA winning gold in gymnastics. That was my biggest like success of, and also how could I forget, Gorgeously Me being number one, or not number one, but just making the New York Times bestseller list. Like that was really fierce and a good accomplishment. But other than that, 2024 was like, it was hard personally, professionally. What was the last year about? Was last year my bukkake year and it's going to be okay from now on? Or is it?
Yeah. So, it's your chart is so activated right now. And I, without knowing that 2024 was a tough year for you, from you sharing that, I would know it from your chart because of how many planets were were doing very rare and important things in your chart last year. Namely, the thing that I really want to call out is that Jupiter, which has been in Gemini, has been going through an area of your chart which is all about endings and closures. And it is a very existential, very challenging transit because we have to release and surrender, and we have to shut things down. And as someone who is, remember the complexities in your chart, right? So like as someone who is passionate and wants to be alive and wants to keep things going, the idea of having to close things up can be really, really devastating. But this transit only happens every 12 years. So I'm kind of curious if 2012 into 2013, if anything was going on in your life during that time.
So crazy. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of goodbyes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what this cycle is. But I have good news. It's ending.
Oh, thank God.
Yes. And I actually wrote down the date that it ends, which is May 4th. So you are right now, like truly, truly at the very end of it. At the very end of it.
Ooh, that was so rough.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't mean to make you cry.
No, that was really good. No, I like lost my stepdad in 2012. That's the year I got HIV. Like a lot of this year I got sober from meth. Like, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of endings, a lot of big transformative shifts.
Yeah.
Is there anything that when you think about—
And also interestingly, like my hair care company went through like the people who owned us in the end of 2023 went through a bankruptcy. So like we almost lost like our future. And so there was like a lot of like, I didn't know if JVN Hair was going to make it or not. And we went from such stability to such fast instability. And I had to like fight. And like the amount of nights that I like cried myself to sleep, didn't see a way forward, like so much fighting to preserve and like not wanting to say goodbye. And there were certain things that I was just like not willing to like, I just wasn't ready. And now I'm really proud of it because at least with JVN Hair, because it like we were able to like make it through such stormy seasons and preserve like so much, but there was so much that I had to say goodbye to that was like, even within JVN Hair, that was incredibly painfully difficult. And just like wake up in the middle of the night, like yelling people's names because you just like guilt and shame and sadness for how like things turned out. So yeah, but 2012 and 2024 were both like literally, so 36. Bitch, 2036, I am building a fucking bunker. I am not, like 2036, like I'm out. Like I am like 2036, I'm doing a cabin down by the fucking river.
It's not a bad time to do it.
These hoes are not, no. Now that I know, 2036, you will not find me out in these streets.
I am out. Away message on.
So is that a Jupiter, like when Jupiter is in what area?
So for you, it's when Jupiter moves through the 12th house, which is when it is in Taurus into Gemini, until it gets to 22 degrees of Gemini, which is when it crosses over your ascendant and then starts a new 12-year cycle. And it's really about becoming who you are again. You know, it's like, how do you integrate what happened into this next 12-year journey?
Kill me. Jesus. Okay. Does it say anything like fabulous for like this year, like after May 4th, or like anything? Is it going to get like way better? It's like some of like the bad stuff like over and it's like probably going to get like really cute again?
Yes. I mean, I would say that one of the biggest missions for you, because astrology is all cycles, right? It's like we have a Jupiter cycle, we have Saturn cycles. Neptune just went into a new sign for the first time since 2011. That's for everyone. You know, like all of these big pivots are happening right now. One of the reasons that 2025 and 2026 just on a collective level are such massive transformative years, and we should expect lots of things to change in the next 2 years. But for you, these are activating an area of your chart that has to do with the collective. So I wouldn't be surprised if you started to find yourself like really like doubling down on activism in the next couple of years, like really that becoming a huge part of your identity and your purpose and your passion. And then on top of that, also thinking of expanding your reach even further. Like, what does it mean for you to have an audience today? And what will that mean at the end of that Saturn journey, which is going to be in 3 years from now? And it's going to be really different. You know, who are your audiences? Who are you speaking to? Who are you changing the lives of? And that we're shifting out of a period that was really thinking about your career and your legacy. You've defined your career and your legacy in a lot of ways, but now it's time to expand on that. You know, what does it mean to build on the platform that you have, on what you have already created, and really turn that into something that has the potential to impact the world in an even bigger way and really make a difference, you know, make the world better than you had come into it.
Like literally what my mission is.
Yeah. And and you haven't necessarily had the time to do that, you know, you haven't, and it hasn't been what your chart has been asking you to do. You know, your chart has been asking you to define your legacy and who you are and how you're going to be sort of remembered, right? But now it's like, what do you do with that? And that's what the next step is.
You're in your book, It's All Magic, which I'm so obsessed with you and your work. I just can't even get enough. What led you to get into astrology? What's your chart? What's your mission? Like, what are you working on? Where, if people have just fallen in love with you as much as I have in this last little bit of time, where are you the most active? Where can people stay involved with you?
I'm everywhere on social media at Aliza Kelly, and I have a podcast called Horoscope Weekly, and I have 5 different books to check out. I run my virtual community called the Constellation Club. I'm out and about. I'm everywhere. But where I feel my mission is right now is to try to get people excited for the big changes that are coming, to get people to feel as embodied as possible and as present as possible for the fact that this is all magic. We are living in a magical, albeit chaotic time. And part of that is also giving ourselves permission to go further and deeper with our passions and our love and our capacity for healing than we ever had before, because that is the microcosm of the macrocosm. And the more people that are in it and doing it and participating in what that healing looks like, the more that we're going to be able to actually make a movement out of this, right? And we need movements. We need hard movements, not just the soft movements, but everything is connected. We all need to be as embodied as possible in order for us to be able to be like, actually, we're ready to tear it all down.
What has your work in astrology taught you about human nature?
I think that I think we all want the same things. I think we all want to feel heard, and we all want to be seen, and we all are lost and confused and are looking for ourselves.
If someone wants to get better acquainted with their chart, how can they find an astrologer to work with? Like to vet a good astrologer?
It's a good question. I mean, I certainly think that there's different astrologers for different people. If you find someone that you connect with on social media and the way that they speak about astrology resonates with you, then that is probably your astrologer. Because astrologers are translators, right? So you want to find someone who speaks a language that makes sense to you.
Really fast. I'm sorry, you guys. I could do 19 more episodes with Aliza, and but we're getting there. What are 3 practices we could try today to feel more in tune with ourselves and the universe?
I would say look for the moon, just like you're 5 years old. Try to find it. It's always a joy. Ask yourself how you're feeling, without any judgment or expectations around it, and find the signs everywhere. Call them out, call for them, and connect with being as alive and as connected to the systems as you can.
Aliza, I love you so much.
I love you so much.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. We love you so much. You guys get her books, follow her on social, listen to the pod, and just thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.